Hi guys, I'm Mike,
I'm Mark.
and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to a special episode today. Usually when you hear Mark on the channel, it is in relation to the feeder series, and although the feeder series is a topic obviously close to his heart, he obviously is a passionate F1 fan as well. You know, that's what we always used to have chats about on the channel, was F1 related. So today we have a special F1 topic that we'll be talking about. There are introduction of 2 new tracks onto the race calendar this year. And those tracks are Hanoi in Vietnam and Zandvoort, or the return of Zandvoort, we should say, which is the Dutch Grand Prix. And so what we're going to do is we are going to have a chat with the tracks, and we will say what we reckon is going to be the better track for racing in the 2020 season. So we will start off with Hanoi, and would you like to talk us through Hanoi a little bit, Mark?
I think it's the first track of its shape. I'm trying to figure out the shape of what it's a 3-pronged circuit basically, and I think it's the first 3-pronged circuit. It's a very, very interesting circuit. When you look at it, you can see elements of Sepang, elements of Kota and Suzuka. There's lots of flowing corners, long straights, and ever tightening corners.
Yeah,
and also a few hairpins.
Yeah, it's another Herman Tilke greatest hits track, isn't it?
It basically Tilke has probably thought, okay, everyone's complaining, I'm just going to take what everyone loves from each of my tracks and mash it all together.
Yeah.
And if you ask me who designed this, I would say it's Tilke, but it's almost like he's had help on it, because there are some things that are very un-Tilke about it.
Yeah, and
I'm talking about mainly probably from turn 10 to turn 16, just the way it's shaped. It's not with curving back straight into a double left-hander. Yeah. And then into lots of very short, minimal curvature corners where it's basically flat out up until probably turn 16, and that is very un-Tilke-esque.
Yeah, and I think on this track, its main defining feature, or at least from an aerial view, the main defining feature will be those 2 massively long straights which almost have the pinhead, and it's not quite a hairpin turn. There's a little bit of a kind of chicane.
Is it? You know what that actually reminds me of? Turn 11, turn 12.
What?
The hell corner from Bahrain.
I can see that. Yeah.
I call it the hell corner because I think I'm willing to bet most of us have played F1. It's the F1 games.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to assume.
Yeah, so that's why I call it the hell corner.
Yeah. So, for me, with Hanoi, the action on it, I think, will be predominantly based in DRS zones on the overtake, and probably those 2 main straights will probably be where most of the action happens on track. That's for me. Any different thoughts on that, Mark?
On the straights and DRS, but there's also a few overtaking zones that probably won't be DRS. I see turn 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5. I can see that being a wheel-to-wheel overtaking zone.
Yeah, I mean, turn ones are always notorious for being usually overtaking spots on a track. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I suppose.
If you look at the way it's shaped, how turn one turns in on itself, then starts turning back, it's going to be a matter of who's brave enough to go who's brave enough to go faster.
Yeah.
It'll be a slow corner.
Yeah, and I think with Hanoi, it is an interesting concept, and it's going to be an interesting race to see support-wise on the calendar, because obviously first time Vietnam's ever been on the F1 calendar. I know it's been fairly slow to build, and I'm not entirely sure whether ticket sales have been that great for it because of where it is, basically.
There is one factor that could make this race a standout,
and that is
Vietnam's weather.
It is unpredictable.
It could be like a Singapore dream day, or hot, sticky endurance racing, but rain can flick on at any moment and it could cause utter chaos.
And we all know whenever rain gets involved in Formula 1, it does tend to lead to interesting races, whether that's only partially affected races by rain or just flat out full wet races.
Yeah, but I think I can almost safely say that I think this is going to be a very good race, or eventually a good race like Baku.
Yeah, I think there's positives to it. I'm excited to see how it does, and excited to see actually, because that's the thing with new tracks. It can look good in principle, but until you actually race on it, you're not entirely too sure what's going to happen on track. But I think it's certainly going to be one of the most fascinating races to pay attention to this season.
One thing I'll say, and I think you could agree with me, I think lots of F1 fans would like it a lot more if Turn 5 instead was turned into where Turn 10 is, and they just got rid of that. The first initial back straight with the almost more complicated Russia turn.
Yeah.
So if that was just a hairpin at a much shorter distance, I think a lot more F1 fans would like this track.
Well, I think we just want more, and it's been a problem on the grid, we just want more kind of overtaking corners. There are too many kind of flowing 90-degree corners that don't allow really for much overtaking. You look at kind of tracks like Sochi, that's a sucker for this. Singapore, obviously being a street circuit, is a nightmare for that. But yeah, there's obviously tracks.
I wouldn't be able to tell this is a street circuit if you just gave me the overlay.
No.
That's one thing I will say, and it does look like there could be more overtaking opportunities other than DRS zones.
There does. So it's exciting to see what that will be on its first intro, and it is 4th on the calendar, I believe, isn't it?
I believe it is.
It is after China. So
one thing I will say is the change they made by adding, I believe they added an extra turn.
Yep.
And I think that extra turn is actually going to create more racing. Because if you look at the original one, it looked like it was turn 20 was a fast exit, and then a flowing turn into the pits, and then 21-22 went back around over the pits. But now they've basically extended the fast flowing corner, made it a bit tighter, and then into a 45-degree hairpin.
Which, yeah, does lend itself to better racing in theory. So we can't wait to see how that goes. But we now...
Sorry.
I was going to... That's all right. One last thing.
The thing that's going to create create an incident, if any, is the pit exit onto turn 2. If two people are battling wide, turn 1, turn 2, similar to what we saw in Russia, in the similar, the long curved corners, if two people are wheel to wheel, it's going to make exiting the pits an absolute challenge.
That adds to the intrigue of it.
It does. So, Hanoi could be either, 2016 Baku, or it could go very 2017, 18 Baku, and chuck in rain, and you've got a very good race.
Yeah. And so we now move on to the second race in this comparison, and that is Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix. Obviously, one of the older circuits on the track. It hasn't been part of the F1 calendar for a while, probably mainly due to its track width. But obviously, there is a very popular Dutch driver in Formula 1, which is Max Verstappen at the moment.
There's a Dutch driver who's popular?
Yeah, surprisingly so, Mark. There's a Dutch driver who's actually quite popular.
Nah,
Yeah.
can't be. Nah, must just be German.
No, shock news. Max Verstappen is popular. No, that's not shock news. No, but Max Verstappen will finally have his home Grand Prix, which has brought the return of Zandvoort. And still, its main issues for me probably will be it may be a little bit narrow. I think, like Hanoi, the main overtaking spots are likely probably to be DRS zones, but I do think turn 1 has the potential, certainly going into a first corner, an exciting start to the race. But I feel, again, that can be an overtaking point from there. The added interest to Zandvoort is the fact that it has a banked corner being installed, which obviously we haven't seen since the likes of Indianapolis being on the F1 calendar. So that is going to be very interesting to see how modern F1 cars tackle that.
What I don't get about the banked corner, as much as I love a banked corner, is it was originally an overtaking corner, possibly. If you look at it, you could see that drivers going wheel to wheel at that corner going for an overtake. Now, they seem to have removed that opportunity.
Well, there must have been some thought and reason behind it. But it's a unique selling point, because, in fairness, we all know when it comes to the coverage, all Sky F1 will be talking about before that first practice, during qualifying, during the race, will be that banked corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting if French will finally have their own independent space program, because Grosjean's going to be flying off to space.
No, don't. By that stage, Roman Grosjean is powering Haas to best of the rest in.
Nah, true. It'll be a Danish space program going up.
Ever confident about Haas's chances for next season, then, Mark?
They could do well, but it's going to take a miracle effort.
I think it probably depends on what Ferrari produce, because they're heavily linked on that front. But yes, Zandvoort, again, there are lots of kind of winding corners. If you were to look from above, it has a much more classic circuit feel to it. Like I said, overtaking's probably difficult, mainly due to the fact that it's such a narrow track. But I think one thing that has to be taken into account here is the crowd and atmosphere at Zandvoort will be incredible, I imagine. I think it will be one of the most heavily attended Grand Prix for its capacity this season. And I think if Max is doing well, I think it really could lead to a good race, because that crowd will be very much hyped on the race. I imagine you'll be seeing orange flares going off everywhere, just a sea of orange across the eye can see. And I think, like sometimes in a football game, if a crowd are really up for it, it can translate onto the players on the pitch. I think if there's a really kind of excited and almost feverish crowd in the stands, it could translate to the track. I know you can pretty much zone out from stuff, but if you see everyone hyped up, it kind of coincides maybe a little bit to each other.
For me, it sounds like you're admitting that it may not be the better race.
I think both I'm sceptical of.
I'm more sceptical of Zandvoort, mainly due to the width.
Because that's the main issues with a track maybe like San Marino or Imola returning to the calendar, is that width of the track. Because obviously when these tracks were on the F1 calendar, the F1 cars were a lot shorter and narrower, so obviously there were more overtaking points because they could fit wheel by wheel on more places on the track on this type of track width.
Yeah, but I can Zandvoort for me is going to end up like Spain, but prettier and probably a bit better than Spain, just for the fact that qualifying will be more of an event thanks to that banked corner. Seeing how far a driver is willing to push their car around a banked corner, for me it's going to be almost like a Monza qualifying with Monaco's level of importance. It's going to be a fast lap, pushing the car to the extremes for an extremely fast time, but the pole is going to have the major importance similar to Monaco.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a race that's going to fly by. I imagine it'll have a lot more intensity as a race than what Hanoi would do. But I'd say I think it's pretty obvious which one you'll pick. But in conclusion, Mark, why do you think Hanoi will be the better race?
It'll be the better race for the race. The pure race and the chances of rain and the fact that it's designed with modern cars in mind. With the width. I'm not knocking Zandvoort. If I believe you said that Zandvoort starts in the very start of the European summer.
Yes, I believe it does.
So it could rain. It could get very interesting. In which case, if it rains, I mean, here's the thing. I'd watch Zandvoort for the Saturday and I'd watch Hanoi for the Sunday.
I think that's probably a fair assessment. But I'm going to try and be devil's advocate and put a case forward for Zandvoort. On track action, both, we don't know what's going to happen because it's been so long since Zandvoort's been on the calendar, and also Hanoi is completely new. Yes, Hanoi is built for modern race cars, but I think with the adaptations that they've made, and there has been kind of lots of preparation for this Grand Prix, and the fact that it will be Max Verstappen's own Grand Prix, I just feel with the whole atmosphere around the weekend, people will be excited, and it's not going to be one of those things that fall flat on its face. I imagine it's going to be a chaotic first corner, and then that's going to set the tone for the rest of the race. Even if it's sun come rain, and that banked corner really, I think, is going to lead to interesting racing. And like you said, I think qualifying will be interesting as well. So as a complete package over a race weekend, I think Zandvoort brings the more intrigue to me. I'm more intrigued by Zandvoort to see how it'll race than I am intrigued by Hanoi.
I think that's fair enough. My reasons are just for the modern car factor and the width.
Yeah. And so you've heard our thoughts, you've heard our kind of discussions around the track, of what we think might be kind of things to look out for on track. So we now pose the question to you listening. What do you think will be the better addition to the 2020 calendar? Do you think it will be Hanoi in Vietnam? Do you agree with Mark? Or do you agree with me that Zandvoort and all the kind of circus that will be around it will lead to a good race weekend and a good race at Zandvoort? But it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on what you are expecting. And guys, if you are new around here, you can subscribe to the channel. You can click that bell notification, and so you can keep up to all our latest content, just like this one, F1 related. Or if they're interested in feeder series, why would they subscribe, Mark?
Because it's now covered every week.
Every week we will have something on the feeder series, that F2, F3, or if it's relevant in series, even expanding from there. So guys, if you are just wanting content through this winter break, or just wanting content throughout the season, make sure you drop us a subscribe. But that was our thoughts on the two tracks. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope it starts a discussion and a debate. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.